Ooh, yeah, brother. It is episode 7 of Shot of Nostalgia, and welcome back. We're bros. We're hanging out down at the Turnbuckle Tavern for the most immersive, most awesome experience of deep diving straight down the 1995 ECW. I'm good old Mike Belcaster as always, and my partner in crime, this bad man.
Live from the No Sale Studios, it's the Ace of the Tavern, Stephen ACEFIELD. On the corner of Rittner and Swanson, we are bringing you 1995 ECW goodness, hardcore heaven 1995. Man, happy New Year's Eve, dude. We are a day away from the end of 2022. And man, we did Christmas Eve last week. And now here we are celebrating another holiday. December flew by. This season of Shot of Nostalgia is flying by. It's just been a blast, dude. This has been so much fun.
No, 100%. And I'm honestly shocked that we've made it this far to the end of the year in such a flash, man. Everybody be safe. Have a great New Year. Have a great New Year's Eve. Have a great New Year's Eve. Have a great 2023. But Shot of Nostalgia's got to have an awesome 2023, which I'm so looking forward to. But we're live, man. We're live in 95, brother.
As Belcaster mentioned, we are going to be reviewing ECW Hardcore Heaven 1995. We're going through all the results of ECW Hardcore TV. And there's also a special unaired fan cam version of the results that we have. Some different results that we didn't plan on reviewing, but in the recap, we had to because there was a title change. And if you blinked, you missed that Stevie Richards and Raven won the tag team championship, but I had to find out what event it was. Found the results. We'll break it down for you. Make sure you guys are all aware about what's been going on in ECW since we last left you.
Hell yeah. Looking forward to it.
So we freshly watched Hardcore Heaven. And honestly, this was one of those events that didn't have that many rave reviews. People look at this event similar to some of the ECW events earlier in the year, as it felt like a mess of booking. It felt like it wasn't as exciting as the event prior. What were your initial thoughts? Obviously, don't go too deep into it, but did you feel that? Did you feel there was a lack of excitement on this card? Maybe because Malenko, Guerrero, and Eddie were missing?
Yeah, it was definitely a change of what we've been so accustomed to with the greatness of ECW. Not taking away anything. It was not a bad show by any means. It was just not to the quality of in-ring wrestling that we're used to. So yeah, it was a little lackluster on my behalf. I thought it was fun. I still thought it was a great watch. I thought it was great to sit down and enjoy the shit out of it, but it was still a little different, and it had a little bit of like a TV show vibe and not so much a super card, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just said Eddie and Guerrero, by the way. If you guys can see me, it's Malenko, Benoit, and Guerrero that were missing from the show because I originally thought this was the end of us seeing them. Yeah, exactly, Eddie Gilbert. I thought this was the end of us seeing them, but this is them just doing a tour in Japan. We'll get to that about the shared talent and the impact it has on the show. But, in the newsletter, we'll talk about a little bit about the budding relationship with Mexico and AAA. And we'll see, you guys see next week, we're going to get the debut of Steve Austin. We're going to get the debut of Rey Mysterio, and they're starting to see a lot of faces that go on to do bigger and better things outside of Philadelphia. But it's crazy a who's who. We mention it every week. It's just insane to see who's walked through these doors and who entertained the fans in Philadelphia, because it starts to become quite astounding to see a guy like Steve Austin got his re-uppance here because he spent, it was a cup of coffee. It was a really small amount of time from leaving WCW and being fired, walking out, and then I feel like his run in ECW is going to really set the stage for what happens a year later with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
No, 100%. This is some of Austin's best promoing, especially before the Steve Austin era. This is like where he really starts to develop his character and his persona, more of what we see in the Stone Cold, in the future. Of course, he has his stunning Steve Austin run, but this is going to be beautiful. And, yeah, man, I can't wait. I loved his promos in ECW. I thought his time in ECW was really great. Just fun. And I'm looking forward to it, man.
But that's next week, so we'll give you guys, that was a little teaser for it. Let's get into the happy hour, go through the newsletters from June of 1995. Dave Meltzer driving this train. All right, as Dusty's being held back from 2022 going to 2023, let's start with the June 26, 1995 newsletter. And the newsletter, it incited quite the conversation with you and I last week. And there's a lot of interesting thoughts that, I received some good feedback about the conversation we had. And you and I discussed some of the hot button issues last week. Won't go into them. If you guys want to hear it, go to episode 6 and check it out, what we were talking about. But I think you said it best. We were texting on the side. You're just like, if we don't talk about it, who is going to? I think it's important to set the stage for what 1995 was and what wrestling was in 95 and the concerns that not only the talent had, but the fans had.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's one of those things, we're technically journalists here. At the end of the day, we're doing our job. We're having a good time, right? And I feel like it's important. You have to cover every aspect of it, or else you don't get the full picture. You can't. You can't stare at a Picasso with half the painting missing. You gotta really develop the whole piece of the art, and I think this is part of it. I mean, it really sets us into this time zone that we are in here in 95, and it wouldn't make sense to skip over some of these hard-hitting issues because it's part of the time.
100%. And one of the biggest things we pulled away talent-wise was the emergence of the Gangstas here in ECW. And Meltzer covered this in the June 26th newsletter, and he said the Gangstas bolted for ECW and missed the last few dates in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They were scheduled through the 6/16 show, although the promotion apparently knew they weren't going to be there, as the Headbangers were booked on all the spots in their place on the shows. So a couple things, obviously, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we talked about their run there. Their heel work is masterful. Maybe, just maybe, we'll do a little bit of covering of Smoky Mountain Wrestling if we find the time. But the Gangstas were one of the hottest acts leaving Smoky Mountain Wrestling to shore up the tag division. Was huge. Public Enemy feels like they have gone through everybody. When the Gangstas emerge, it's like, wow, a breath of fresh air for two guys that are just, the fans knew who they were. Public Enemy felt like they were threatened by them. This was the perfect resurgence for the tag division that they needed.
Yeah, no, 100%, man.
And some of the heel work they were doing, if you guys are not familiar with the Gangstas, New Jack and Mustafa, the heel work in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, it's quite crazy. And one of the stories that really rings true in my head about understanding your environment and the context of the fans that are around you was the story that I think New Jack was telling back, I think it was on a podcast or a shoot interview about him utilizing the fact that they were in Tennessee, most of these shows, and people had carried the Confederate flag. So he took a Confederate flag from the front of one of the merch tables and they were selling them. And he took it and he didn't pay for it, but he used it similar to Shawn Michaels when Shawn Michaels was like denigrating the Canadian flag in Montreal by humping it, blowing his nose on it, wiping his ass with it, whatever. He was doing similar things with the Confederate flag. And it got so much heat because people felt like that was so disrespectful in the area. He continued to do it because he was getting a genuine reaction. And the guy was like, I'll give you these flags going forward, because people were buying them at intermission to fly them every chance they got. So it just, understanding New Jack in that environment must have been really challenging for them, especially during that time. Mid 90s, early 90s was not the most accepting time, especially in that area of the world for wrestling. Yeah. And they did a really good job of utilizing that. And they came into ECW with so much momentum.
100%. And it really hit the urban community. I mean, it was a huge, big deal. And big kudos to New Jack for kind of utilizing that heat and making it into such a great character. I don't think he gets enough credit for how over he was, especially in those Tennessee, the Southern shows. Pretty awesome in retrospect. I mean, might have the times changed, so pretty cool.
And if you go back to right when he passed away, I think they were still doing Talking Smack on the network following SmackDown, and this was during the COVID era, I think, because they still had the Thunderdome fans behind them, and Paul Heyman did a small eulogy talking about the impact that he had on his career in ECW, and New Jack's not really, he doesn't really fit into a mold of what a wrestler is as far as his style goes and what he brings to wrestling. He mentioned, we would show you footage, we own the footage, but we can't show you this because he was the least PG sports entertainer of all time. And, Paul Heyman, it feels like it was and he's one of those guys that he's so great with words. Even he had a hard time quantifying what New Jack meant to wrestling ECW and for what wrestling became. So, shout out to New Jack, and I'm really excited that we're getting to experience his introduction here to ECW.
Yeah, 100%. The cool thing about that was it shows how huge of talent New Jack was, because Paul doesn't talk about ECW on WWE television, pandemic or not. Usually, I think this would be the first instance when somebody has passed away that Paul has been out there and mentioned it, and I think that's huge, right? Because you don't get Paulie breaking character in the middle of a SmackDown or a Raw to talk about a former talent, and I think that was astonishing, but awesome at the same time. Because New Jack, we'll never see him on WWE TV. That was it though. It was great. It was beautiful.
There were some rumors during the time where Sabu was doing his run. We mentioned it before in WWE, like post ECW being purchased and that resurgence after One Night Stand, and it had a little buzz going that New Jack would make his return there. And I'll do some more research on finding the rumors, and who knows if they're true or not. Maybe they appear in the newsletter. I can go through Meltzer in 2006 to see if it actually exists. But him and ECW, WWE or WWE's version of ECW doesn't sit right with me. I'm glad that he never actually stepped through those doors, because how could he do what he does best under that environment? I just don't think it would work.
Yeah, no. And it just, a little light bulb goes off in my head. Maybe it would be an awesome shot of nostalgia to cover the resurgence of ECW and how that all went down, and things to think about. But yes, awesome.
Money. Yeah. Money. All right. Well, that was, it might be a good thing to cover, but let's get into Sabu. I mentioned before, there was a hint thrown out by Paulie during one of the chokeslam angles in regard to Sabu. We know that Sabu no-showed three-way dance. He was buried on TV. We talked about that to exhaustion. We'll essentially talk about Sabu some more, but it seems like there's more momentum to getting Sabu back in the company. And Paul Heyman confirmed he's been called once a week by Sabu, but no deal has been made, while Sabu has claimed both Paul and Todd want him back. So we do know Sabu makes his return here, and he's more over than ever when he comes back. But he's starting behind the eight ball a little bit because, as we mentioned, he's buried on TV. When you do that to the fans and they feel like you abandoned them, I think something clicks in their brain that you're never going to be able to get over with them again. But Sabu immediately does what he does, gives his body to the promotion. Those three letters of ECW mean so much to him, and he quickly earns all the cheers back from them. So it's really, really cool to see that we're starting to see such a short period of time has passed, 4 or 5 months. Sabu's already having some momentum to get back in ECW. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, man, he never burnt that bridge. Not physically. He rebuilt it a little bit. He got some rope, he restring it. He was good.
Or he just jumped across it. He did the plancha over the barricade, over the bridge. Who needs a goddamn bridge when you're Sabu, right? So there will be a convention involving the shows both nights, 6:30 and 7:1. The other activities include meeting the wrestlers. So internet conventions are something that are new, and we see that a lot. We're traveling fans, but this is sort of a new thing here with ECW fans that are passionate enough to have, gatherings together based on, what we call a modern day con, right? Like convention. Yeah. This is something that we're seeing here in ECW. It's the birth of this concept that is so huge for wrestling. We see promotions based on it. You talk about Conrad Thompson, whole wrestling promotion based on Starcast, So yeah. AEW in a lot of ways was built on conventions like this and selling t-shirts and merchandise. So it's pretty crazy to see.
Yeah, 100%. All In would have never happened without Starcast being, such a great partner. And the event was a spectacle. You had to be there. It was 1 weekend long. You had all this cool stuff to do. And I feel like this is awesome to kind of see the beginning steps of that. It's pretty wild.
And that being said, the fact that they're in town means the crowd will be hotter than ever. You got passionate fans. They're always hot, but for the event we're going to be reviewing, they are in town and they are loud and proud. And man, this is going to be a fun crowd to review. The signs are out there. We got, I think the front sign for this event said, "We want a lynching." There was some crazy goddamn sign. Spill blood, not beer. Like all these signs, this is classic. So if you comb through them, I even think some of them were censored on the network. And I think the fact that we have our tape trading, we're able to see it. But some of those signs were maybe the lynching one was definitely blocked out. But the fans are a huge part of the shows, and it's so awesome to see when these guys are coming from New York, from Atlanta. They're all coming from all over the place just to meet under the one passion of pro wrestling. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, listen, it was the early fan fest. It was the early everything. You got a draw to bring in your community, your fans from all over the place. You get a really good hot show that you can record, maybe two, and the passion's there on all fronts, not just from the wrestlers, but from, all the fans that have made it to attendance. It adds so much flavor to it all. I love it.
So Meltzer finally got his hands on the Hostile City Showdown tape, and he said it's a must-see. That was one amazing show. He said, I finally saw the Guerrero Malenko first meeting. I'd give it 4.5 stars, better than anything in the U.S. this year so far. He said Cactus Jack versus Terry Funk was gruesome and not my cup of tea, but it was excellent for what it was, as was Public Enemy versus the Pitbulls. Based on what I've seen thus far, it is the best U.S. show of the year. We covered it a few weeks back. It's interesting how it's like word of mouth. It's almost like the Pony Express back in the day. It takes a little bit for all these journalists to get their hands on these tapes. But it's interesting to hear Meltzer's feedback on the show. I feel like I had to mention it here. He's considering the best show of the year in U.S. And I mean, I can't really argue with him. It's one of my favorite shows we covered thus far.
Yeah.
So on the 6/19 TV show, Cactus Jack did another one of his best in the world interviews, building up the Sandman match, while the only complete match aired. The entire show was Public Enemy versus the Pitbulls from May 13th at the ECW Arena, in which they both went to about 5 tables from moonsaults, superplexes, powerbombs, etc. So he had said the guys are by no means great workers in the Chris Benoit or Eddie Guerrero sense, but they do incredible table spots to make up for it. This is talking about the teams of Public Enemy and Pitbull. We talked about how limited the Pitbulls are as far as match length goes, quality goes, but Public Enemy is the same regard. They are super over. You and I were really, mostly me, I'll speak for myself. I was very, very hard on them during our WCW coverage of 1996. But they really, you understand who they are as competitors and why they got over with the ECW crowd. I mean, you look at a guy like Sandman, they're cut from the same cloth. It's not going to be Catch's Cat Scan, technical style, Bret Hart level, Mr. Perfect, but it fits what ECW is all about. And they're risking their body out there doing athletic things for big guys.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like when we were covering WCW, it was hard to get behind them because they were so out of place there, And I knew where they came from, obviously. And you're starting to you caught the Public Enemy fire. You got your hands in the air. You're waving them like you just don't care. But it's you really grow to respect them when you see them in this environment and see how much they do for the company. And I'll even give the Pitbulls the same thing. The Pitbulls make multiple appearances per show. Granted, they're taped all over the place and shit like that, but I mean, it's cool to see the effort coming in from these guys and how much they really do put their bodies on the line. And I love that Meltzer's like, yeah, they do incredible table spots to make up for their lack of athleticism, but you wouldn't hear that nowadays.
No, not at all. Especially, and it has to do with probably this is the only place you could see this, and now it's so watered down. You could see it everywhere. Every indie show, you could see table spots and things like that. Maybe not to the level they were doing it here. Maybe not the amount of blood, but I think this was sort of, you got to remember context. You want to talk about music and the Beatles, what they were doing with music. You have to think about it where it was in the 60s. You got to also think about Public Enemy in 1995 context. Most times, if you're watching wrestling in 1995, you're not seeing what they're doing. So that has to be considered when you're watching this here in 2022.
100%.
So the other thing I want to bring up with Public Enemy, just quick, and we'll probably cover it in depth because we're going to get the debut of the Dudley Boys all together. And there's some heat between Public Enemy and the Dudleys that is covered extensively. If you guys are interested in doing that, type in a shoot interview where Bubba and Devon go in on Public Enemy. But the other thing was this incident in 1999 with the Acolytes, also known as APA, John Bradshaw, Layfield, and Farouk, and Public Enemy at that show in Sunday Night Heat. Are you familiar with that work, that shoot fight that they had in the ring? Or not even a fight. It was a one-way beatdown from the Acolytes to Public Enemy. Do you remember this?
I know of it. I foggily remember it, but I'm dying to hear more about it.
So I'll give you guys the complete, because we're not going to cover it. I feel like it's important. So I was just doing some Public Enemy research. I want to hear about anything I could pick up on Public Enemy because I'm just fascinated by their act and how they got themselves over to the point where they were signed by WCW and to the point where WWF needed to sign them too. Of course, the WWF run was such a dud. I mean, that's putting it lightly. They never got over. They never resonated with that audience. They were teamed as jobbers. They really felt that way. But the story goes, apparently, according to, and this is from the mouths of the Dudleys, and this is also the mouth of Farouk and Bradshaw. Apparently, they were setting up a table match at potentially WrestleMania or Backlash in 1999, and the finish on Sunday Night Heat was supposed to be Public Enemy going through a table, and that was the finish. They worked on it. They told the ref, Jimmy Corderas was the ref, and they all worked it out. And right as Public Enemy's music is hitting, I think it's Johnny Grunge, and it might have been Rock a Rock. One of them leaned over to Bradshaw and said, we're not going to do table spot. And they were like, that's the finish. What do you mean? And like, we don't, it's not, it doesn't work for us. We're not going to do it. And they go out to the ring. So Farouk leans over to Bradshaw and says, what did he say? And he said, they don't want to do the table spot. And Farouk said, well, I guess we'll bring the tables to them. And they walked out to the ring, and just, they had a different look on their face, and it was on. It was supposed to be a normal tag match, but there was weapons immediately. There was no tagging. The ref is clearly confused. Some of the, if you guys are interested, check it out on Google, type it in, Sunday Night Heat from May of 1999 with Public Enemy and the Acolytes. Goddamn, the chair shots are brutal. And I think the story goes, the Acolytes were ready for a fight in the back, and they were standing there, Gorilla, waiting for them to come back. And Public Enemy just shook their hands and said, thank you for the match. And that was pretty much the last we saw Public Enemy in WWF. So fucking fascinating to me.
Damn.
We'll bring the table to them.
Yeah, I'm now I have to. You got to send me a text to remind me about this, because this is what I'm going to watch when we're done here recording.
It is a 6.5 minute beatdown. That is like, and they immediately throw him through the table. By the way, as a shoot, they put the table at ringside and they throw him through the table like we're doing the table spot, and then some of the chairs. It was ridiculous. So go out and check it out. And Conrad covers it, and I think someone else. Conrad asked Bruce, like, what do you think about that? Because obviously Bruce was an agent. I don't know if he was an agent during 1999. And they asked Jerry Briscoe about it. There's a lot on it. So it's just interesting to hear the takes. And it just took a little bit of just disagreement about maybe they thought they were bigger stars than they were. And the Acolytes like, nope, we're going to take you guys to task for what you just said to us.
Nobody does a shoot fight like the
APA. Dude, crazy. So check it out if you guys are interested. Send me a message on Instagram if you guys check it out and you have any thoughts on it, or call the hotline. We want to hear some Shot Nostalgia love on the hotline from Flagship. Give us some love.
Ooh, nice plug. Like it. I'm here for it.
All right. So Malenko and Guerrero, we have a letter from Jacob Gilbert from Troy, New York. I'm pretty sure he has written to Dave Meltzer, and he wrote a whole bunch of stuff. But this is the one thing I wanted to pull out about Malenko and Guerrero. And he said, I saw the D. Malenko Eddie Guerrero draw on ECW television on 610. Their first bout was worth 5 stars, and so was the second one. Both of these guys have an inside track of Wrestler of the Year. From my view, the field is kind of small this year. Bret Hart is stuck in a stupid feud that should have ended at Survivor Series 93 and is only getting worse. Ric Flair is out of control, so is Vader. He talks about Wrestlers of the Year and all that stuff. But it's interesting to hear Jacob Gilbert of Troy, New York, talking about D. Malenko being 5 stars and talking about both these guys being Wrestlers of the Year. I don't think that can be disputed. I don't know who won Wrestler of the Year in 1995, but it has to be one of these guys. I mean, how could you dispute it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, he kind of unvalidates his opinion by saying Vader's out of control. Vader was never out of control. But I'm here for it.
he was out of control on Boy Meets World. Shout out to Extra Cooler. They covered that episode. That was, that was a great episode by Extra Cooler. So love those boys over there doing God's work, but covering retro stuff as well. So peace nostalgia. All right, let's talk about the July 3rd, 1995 newsletter. And let's talk about this quick. With King of the Ring 1995, we had Mabel winning King of the Ring. Do you remember this happened? Did you watch 1995 King of the Ring live?
Maybe not live. Definitely watched on tape. Before we had the network, but you have very, very, very fuzzy memories of anything going on from it.
So you guys are probably wondering why I'm bringing up King of the Ring. We're not talking about WWF, but this took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the reason why I'm talking about this is this is sort of the moment where Vince McMahon becomes well aware of what ECW was, more than just a super indie promotion that has a grassroots movement and a passionate fan base. It has now infiltrated their promotion. And we have this in the newsletter. Mabel pinned Savio Vega to win the King of the Ring in 8 minutes and 32 seconds. Meltzer says, horrible match. Mabel held a long bear hug and then a long chin lock. Fans started chanting ECW. It wasn't a surprise to hear the chant, but was to hear just how many were doing it and how loud it was. Apparently, there were several other ECW chants during the show, and this was the only one really audible on camera. Apparently, after the show, in front of the building and in the building, there were tons of ECW chants, which was explained to me as more of a negative reaction to the quality of the show than anything else. There were also tons of banners confiscated before the show for ECW promotion and characters. Vince McMahon didn't know what was going on because he said, listen to the crowd, thinking they were chanting for Savio Vega, and it was a very loud chant. They quickly turned down the crowd audio and they figured out what was going on. So this might have been the moment where he kind of thought about ECW in a different light. And it just shows the movement that where fans are passionate enough. And this was the original CM Punk chants during the WWE shows when they're not happy with what's going on. But they were kind of asking for it a little bit here because they're in Philadelphia. They're having Mabel. This is not being in touch with where wrestling was going. You're having Mabel, who, you know, R.I.P. Mabel and everything that Viscera did and all that stuff. Fans were looking for something different, and ECW was giving it to them, and they were rejecting what WWF was giving them in 1995. This was that moment where you can pinpoint where Vince McMahon becomes aware, like, we have to change something.
Yeah. No, and it's crazy. I mean, you step into anybody's territory and you get that kind of reaction. I mean, that's what that's what makes pro wrestling so fan friendly. You know, you get in there, you get to voice your opinion, you get to be loud, you get to, I mean, as long as before it hits getting muted on air, the people in the arena at least can pick it up. But I mean, much like you said, this was the original CM Punk. This was fans disputing their grievances with what they were watching in the ring and letting the company know that, no, we want different. We want something else. And it took a little while for Vince to kind of completely turn into what it was supposed to be. But you're very right. I think he finally got it under his breath. Like, shit, we gotta do something different. Like, these fans aren't happy with the product. The fact that they were confiscating signs back in the day, like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Because I remember going to many Monday Night Raws with signs of Hulk Hogan flipping off, you know, holding the WCW banner and stuff like that. They never took anything away from us. So, yeah, the presence that ECW has is huge, and that's so cool to see where it really happens for the first time in front of a huge crowd.
And the funniest part for the whole thing was Vince thinking they were chanting for Savio Vega. Listen to the crowd. They want him to win. What a baby face. And
they love him.
Who's the one that broke the news to Vince? Like, no, they're chanting for a small promotion down the road in South Philadelphia. And what the hell is that?
What do you mean? So, what do you mean it's not us? God damn it.
So we also have expecting the 7-1 Philadelphia show to be the largest crowd in ECW history because so many are coming from out of town due to the internet convention. As we mentioned before, ECW has the arena booked on 7/15, which should be a big show because New Japan isn't touring during that time, which means Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Eddie will all probably appear and will run again either on 7/29 or 8/5, both during periods where New Japan isn't touring. So Paul Heyman's making, I guess, good use of the scheduling in Philadelphia with the arena. They obviously have control about when they want to run shows. They don't want to do them too close together, even though they do some house shows in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. But running the ECW arena is their cream de la creme. They want to run it there, and they want to make sure they have all their stars. So without Eddie and without Dean and without Chris Benoit, the show's not the same, and I think he recognizes that.
Yeah, and good utilizing the talent pool for it being in town. I think you really can make yourself look it's about the presence, right? You can make your shows look that much better when you put on quality wrestling in front of the fans that are very receptive to it. And obviously Philadelphia, the arena, is where you would do that the best. So I think it comes off great on television, and Paul's got a good mindset for making his product look super strong on what he films and shit like that. So it's super cool.
So as far as the lineup for 7-1, which is Hardcore Heaven, he had said right now the lineup is Sandman versus Cactus Jack, while the final Axel Rotten versus Ian Rod match will be billed as a Taipei. Say it for me, Mike Belcastere. Taipei death match.
Pad Thai.
Pad Thai. We'll both rub glue on their hands and put broken glass on their fist. So you talked about at the beginning, when we saw Axel and Ian going at it. We'll talk about the match at length because it happens here at this event. But yeah, it's the end of it. And I don't think they called the Cactus Jack and the Sandman match a Singapore Cane match, but
No,
they
I did
both
not
were
catch
obviously
that.
legal.
Yeah.
Cactus had the barbed wire wrapped around his arm, so we did see that. But interesting to see that's what they were planning early in June.
Cool.
And the reason Terry Funk isn't wrestling Cactus Jack on the show as originally planned is because Funk's back is in really bad shape, and he probably won't be wrestling anywhere until his IWA tour, which starts on 8/9. Originally, the two of them, Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, were supposed to shoot a major angle on this card to build up the 8/20 show. So, yeah, we saw the return of Terry Funk at Return of the Funker. He's been MIA since. So I think we got the answer to that. He's just battling injury and he can't get in the ring.
Yeah, I kind of like how it adds to his character, though. Like, he's almost like got that Undertaker feel to him because he disappears for so long, and then when he pops up, everybody loses their shit because they're like, holy fuck, Terry Funk's back. But it's so funny that, like, oh, he's in rough shape. His back's in bad shape, and he still continues to wrestle for nearly 20 years after that.
That's true.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I still remember the Beyond the Mat movie that I think that came out in '99, and there was that was sort of the initial behind the scenes thing for us fans that we can see. And like obviously you had the I Quit match with Foley, you got an insight into that, and then Terry Funk's run, and then also I think Jake the Snake had a huge part in it. That was what fans were clamoring for, and Terry Funk was a huge part of that, and he was considering retiring in 1999. This is 1995 where he was considering retiring. The guy just couldn't retire, and I love it personally because Funk is amazing.
No, it's great. And long live Dennis Stamp as well, because he was in that documentary. I wasn't booked, man.
So good.
I worked a show with Dennis Stamp once. It was crazy.
Oh,
he wrote like all the talent on the roster, like poems and shit. It was really out there. But he was a nice guy. Just it was the whole joke was he got in the ring and said I wasn't booked. And, like he just walked out.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a great story. When was that? What year was that?
Shit, 2012, 2013 maybe. Wild.
Awesome. So going back to ECW quick, the dates aren't definite, but it looks like there'll be shows on July 20th in Fort Lauderdale at the War Memorial, on July 21st at Expo Park in Tampa, and then July 22nd at the Orlando Fairgrounds. The Tampa building, after the chair throwing disturbance, decided to book ECW again after all, which is interesting because this was like all that controversy about not being safe for fans. Philadelphia, they do what they want to do. That's their arena. But when they're channeling these other places and they want to do all this touring, fans have to kind of abide by a different set of rules, not brawling in the crowd. They have to make sure that they don't have weapons that are being used. And I'm pretty sure at Holiday Hell at the end of this year, we're going to see that famous chair throwing incident, right? That's when everyone gets the chairs thrown and they keep showing that. That's the ECW compilation you see from whatever the Rise and Fall, whatever ECW DVD you watch. That's the thing you see from December 95. But yeah, just the fan involvement. And it just shows like you're balancing who you are, your identity as a promotion. You have to sacrifice some of that by going to Florida and being someone different. If you want to be expanding to other territories, I don't know if you can do the same thing in Philadelphia that you could do elsewhere.
No, and it's funny because Florida is more Philadelphia than Philadelphia is now. Probably get away with a lot of shit out there.
It's always sunny in Fort Lauderdale. Let's just say that. All right, so we get Benoit, Malenko, and Guerrero booked on all three shows, and even if Benoit goes to WWF, it won't be until well after this point. There is indefinite, but it looks like the first Benoit Guerrero match may be in Fort Lauderdale, and they'll do Guerrero versus Malenko the other two nights. And then they're going to be a Benoit versus Guerrero match, if not matches this summer at the ECW Arena as well. I'm looking forward to that, goddammit. Those guys, we talk about the combination of any of the guys that came in as the Radicals, include Perry Saturn in that because he's badass as well that we don't talk about enough. Those four guys who eventually make their transition over to WWF, and 2 out of the 4 become world champions. D. Malenko probably should have been a world champion. Perry Saturn was booked into oblivion in 2000 with mafia bullshit. But those 4 guys can go, and they're probably one of the bigger transitions to a different promotion. The way they debuted, everything kind of set the tone as what became debuts later on in wrestling. Those guys sitting in the front row with their tickets. That was, I don't know. That was the first time it felt like WWF was doing what other promotions were doing with the debuts. I don't know. Not the Jericho route where they have to do like the vignettes and then this felt like organic. Like, oh, this is from somewhere else, recognizing that there were big stars elsewhere, I guess.
No, 100%. I mean, you could even talk about when Paul White showed up on WWF. I mean, at the time, it was one of those moments like he's under the ring. You know, it's goofy shit. Not goofy, but it looks like it's planned, you know. You did this where these guys are sitting ringside, they're all dressed to the T. I mean, Saturn looked like a pimp. It was great.
Oh, what a shirt by Saturn. That was a great
yeah,
shirt.
what a shirt. The hat too. Nobody ever respects the hat. But yeah, man, it was a big deal for them to be brought in the way they were, and I think I don't think there's ever been a debut that was so cool like that. Like you seen these guys, you knew what it was gonna be, but like you were like, holy shit! It was a really big holy shit moment at the time.
Yeah, and it was catering to the smart fans. They were at the time. I think this was one of those things that people neglect to remember, is that they want to control their narrative about what goes on and who comes into the company and what they are perceived as. This was the first time we're looking at it as, okay, there is a world outside of WWF, WCW, ECW, New Japan. They exist, and these guys made their name out there, and they recognized who they were. They didn't change their name. He wasn't going by Pegasus Kid, whatever, under a mask. These guys are Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, going more reality-based programming. And that was a huge step in recognizing the difference of approach, by recognizing that sometimes things happen outside of our little bubble, and it's okay to build stars off of that.
Yeah, and it was another refreshing thing is they weren't painted in the light of like, oh, these are the WCW guys, you know,
Right.
let's bury them. And I mean, we've seen it with a lot of talent come in and out, but these guys they put some respect on their name and where they came from, and I feel like this is the one time they did it right. You know, like, I mean, you got two out of the four guys there, like you said, became world champions. That's huge for WWF to do. I think it shows a lot of good character, and it shows that they're not fucking stupid, and they know that we know they can do it. They just, you know, they get blindsided and they don't do it enough.
Yeah, and looking back at that WrestleMania 20 moment, that was even huge, because more huge in the fact that it was at MSG. It was the 20th anniversary of WrestleMania, and those guys were the last ones standing in the ring. To think of the journey it came from 1995 ECW, where these guys are wrestling, putting on these 5-star bangers, till how many years? 9 years later, they're standing in the middle of MSG in March of 2004, where they're world champion. And everything happened with Benoit, obviously, that's, you know, people are taking that consideration, and rightfully so, what went down with him. But for that moment in that time, it was validating as a wrestling fan. It really was, because I was watching live. I remember watching that and seeing that journey from where they were, that they came in as, you know, they could have been booked as jobbers. They really could have. And usually Vince McMahon would have done that, but they weren't. And they worked from underneath. Like, it wasn't immediate. Benoit, maybe more so than Eddie, was treated as a main eventer immediately because he got world title shots. Eddie had to overcome a lot, like goofy gimmicks. He had to do the Latino heat stuff with China. People forget how goofy that was.
Yeah.
And kind of stood the course and became world champion. So I love the careers of all these guys in the ring, obviously.
No, 100%. And like, I'll be the first one to admit, I probably was shedding tears, like, you know, and wailing that the fact that they both won the title at wrestling. That's what makes the sport so beautiful. The art of it all, you know, and you see these guys struggle and go through these huge journeys. I mean, I remember when Eddie got into the car accident when he was in WCW, I was like, man, this guy's never going to wrestle the same again. And he came back and he was huge, you know, he was amazing. Right. And just to go through that journey with these people as they're performing, as you're watching them grow. I mean, that's why AEW is such a big deal. That's why wrestling is, you know, you fall in line with the character. You love every aspect of it. You love to see the growth of it, and it's a beautiful thing. And when you get those big moments like that, like, it's hard not to pull, you know, where it tugs your heartstrings, and like, you're like, man, but that's what it's all about. You know, you fall in love with the product, you see these payoffs, and it makes moments, you know.
100%. And we have two letters to kind of end our happy hour from two different fans. The first one being from Paul Kaprzak from Coconut Creek, Florida, and the second one from Lenny Sargent from Gainesville, Georgia. Let's start with our friend Paul. And he has an opinion on ECW, and we always like to build context by talking with the fans and hearing what they say in the newsletter, and couldn't resist including this, where this was just titled ECW as a letter to Dave Meltzer. And he said, after watching ECW on TV and attending their 5-5 Fort Lauderdale show, I'd give my impressions. ECW has the right approach in providing hardcore wrestling. The problem is that too much blood and gross behavior may help TV ratings, but doesn't draw big crowds to the events. Their TV shows should be on late night and isn't for children. For my adult friends, ECW is a must-see or tape show. Their live audience would feel at home in a metal concert or expects violence. He continues, The audience will also expect fast-paced wrestling and wait for blood until later matches. IAN versus Axl Rotten had problems. In putting the match early, it satisfied the bloodthirst but cheapened their performance. Many fans didn't know which Rotten was which. The Pitbulls are a great team and very intense. The match with Public Enemy was exciting. However, Johnny Grunt bladed himself very bad. Many fans were shocked at how he unwrapped his blade and pierced his forehead repeatedly. The amount of blood was far beyond what most fans expected. He continues, and this is more of the health concerns we talked about last week. He said, I work in a hospital and do everything possible to keep blood and bodily fluids away from possible contact. Having bloodied wrestlers fight their way through the crowd isn't a bright idea. I didn't believe what I saw after the match. He said Public Enemy entered the ring to pose. The multi-layer bandage around Johnny's head wasn't enough to stop the blood. The first fan put his arms around Public Enemy for a few photos. When he pulled his arm off Johnny, both his shirt and hands were covered in blood. I have no idea if anyone at ECW has a clue just how dangerous this is. As our hospital, we are warned that even after cleaning, there are strains of hepatitis that can be still active after a year. Touching that area may result in infection. I and many other fans look forward to promotion that can give comedy drama superb skill, moves, excitement, surprises, conflicts. Too much of anything is bad. I hope ECW can find the right balance or learn how to pay bills drawing only a few hundred paying fans. So that was Paul Kaprzak from Coconut Creek, Florida. Your thoughts on that? Because that kind of quantifies what we were talking about last week in a different way.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he's his concern is valid, and especially for the time, it was different, Now, I mean, you could say it's a little safer to do these kind of things, especially because it's more toned down. People aren't gigging as bad as they used to be. I mean, I as he's saying, he stabs himself in the forehead. Like, I can picture the whole thing happening. I picture blood being everywhere. Like, you get the mental picture, especially after watching these. That sometimes they gig like shit, and it looks absolutely like horrific. So I could see where the concern comes from. And again, times were different. Blood was a scary thing back then. So he's got every right. I totally agree with what he's saying to an extent, but I think ECW found a semi-good balance for it, even though the gigging and stuff never stopped. I think they're... I don't know. I think a lot of the fan base got over the blood thing very easily. It wasn't as concerning to them. They bought the ticket to go see. They knew what they were going to buy the ticket to go see. So it's like going to a horror movie and be like, man, there was no comedy in that at all. What the hell? Like, it's you gotta pick and choose your battle.
No, I agree. And I would make the argument that this catches fire past here. And I think Paul was wrong because it did eventually draw on a huge stage. Look at WWF with the blood that they were using. And that can't be, I mean, even through the Ruthless Aggression era. I mean, one of the more famous Stone Cold moments is him covered in blood at WrestleMania 13 in 1997. Also, I mean, I think about some of the worst blade jobs happened well after this. I think about Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series 2003. I think about same thing with Vince McMahon. He gets cut open, I think, in the Zach Gowen match where he gets the chair. I think maybe it was the hard way. He was spurting the blood. Even the blood that he had coming out during the Buried Alive match with Undertaker, the match with Hogan in 2003, he was bleeding everywhere. So the point of that is that I guess there's seasons of wrestling and there's going to be changes that happen. And we're not seeing the last of the blood. And I think that's an influence from ECW where it adds to the story. Maybe it's overdone. We talked about it. But I think wrestling fans, I remember watching as a teenager and early adulthood, and even as a kid, blood was the norm. I used to take my wrestling figures. I took red magic marker or red paint and put it on my figures. I have a Shawn Michaels figure that's ruined to this day from the blood I used to put on him, because to me, that added something to wrestling. I had the Ken Shamrock figure, Jack Specific figure. I used to put the blood that used to come out of his mouth because he felt like he was always internally bleeding. So I don't know. Blood was just a part of wrestling, and maybe that's a bad thing as a kid to be watching it, where it's just you're so desensitized. But in a lot of ways, it added so much to the product, and I think that's almost what's missing in WWE without it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still to this day we watch AEW. I mean, there's blood almost on every show, but it's not overkill, even if it is a shitty gig job or a bad hard way, it doesn't take it adds to the storytelling because it's two guys fighting. It's supposed to be gruesome. You don't see people yelling about blood in UFC, or I mean, even any other sport, but like boxing's barbaric as shit. Nobody's down in down on that. It's just part of the sport. And I think that's what blood added so much value to certain things. You get that big story about how Batista was fined when he gigged himself on the cage, you know, when he was wrestling Jericho. Like, of course, but Batista got it. You have to have that fully tell the story that you're trying to tell. I think it comes across better when done correctly.
Yeah, we go back to November of this year with War Games. There's no blood.
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? Like a War Games match, like they're immediately bleeding. Think about the old school ones from the 80s, the original ones where Dusty's everywhere and Ric Flair. And I don't know, you can make the argument, why even do the match if you're not going to do it the right way? I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Imagine if they called it blood and guts and there was no blood or guts, you know, like you gotta fulfill the whole picture or else it makes it look hokey, right? Like it's like a magician pulling a cat out of the hat instead of a rabbit, like, but you know the cat's laying in there the whole time. Like it'll screw up the whole storytelling process.
So let's go with Lenny Sargent from Gainesville, Georgia. He has something to say about the ECW and attending the show. And he said, I attended the May 13th and the May 20th ECW shows. He said the May 13th show at the ECW Arena was one of the most exciting shows I've ever attended. The aura of that is true hardcore wrestling like I've never felt anywhere but in Japan. Every match was hot from start to finish and accomplished everything Heyman has set out to accomplish. Watching a brawl with Whipwreck and Tommy Dreamer versus Raven and Stevie Richards followed by a classic with Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and a war with Sandman and Cactus Jack was great booking on Paul's part and proves he and ECW are in touch with what the fans want and giving them what they want. The response to the last three matches by the fans was a great feeling you could feel in the arena. The shows in Jim Thorpe and Langhorne were very good and still hardcore audiences, but not quite the same response. Talking about the allure of the ECW arena, and we mention it all the time when we're doing the GCW show, the fucking GCW show. We talk about how environment and the arena and where they're doing the show, whether it be, you know, go down the list when they do it in Harpo in Detroit, whether they're doing it at the Ukrainian Cultural Center in LA or Hammerstein, or they're doing it at the Showboat in Atlantic City. There's a certain aesthetic to the show and it adds to it. It doesn't detract from it. I think that's other promotions. You know, WCW got it. You know, when they change the different things up, they do the bash of the beaches and they have a real good feel of it. They got the Nitro pool parties.
Yeah.
I think WWE, they do this cookie cutter approach to the different arenas, especially today, where you could be anywhere USA. It doesn't matter. Depending on, you just do the same lighting, you put the same thing. Something about the ECW arena and something about the different shows, they feel different. Florida, Jim Thorpe, ECW arena, they all have different aesthetics. And I think they were leaning on that. And that's something that should be more done in wrestling.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that was part of the whole charm of the Attitude Era for WWF, was going to a Backlash, you know, and seeing the different stages, or going to Armageddon or King of the Ring. You know, the giant King of the Ring chair. There were the different sets made the whole thing so much better. And nowadays you could just literally do it in the same garage every freaking week and nobody would tell the difference. Like, 'cause it looks identical. It's became the machine itself. It's Disney on Ice. You know, the whole presentation will never be different, and it takes away from the whole value of the show. Man, I loved different sets. I always loved that appeal of it, because you walk into a WrestleMania and you see that massive stage with, you know, a roller coaster built onto it, or whatever the case is. Just it really shows you're at something special, and that's I thought that was part of the whole love of it, was the presentation values with changing the things. And that goes with the same with arenas and different venues, like Harpo's. Harpo's is a beautiful, you see GCW at Harpo's, you're like, I already know it's going to be a good time. You know, it's one of those things, like, you're already signed up for it.
Hell yeah. And I mean, going back to WWF, I think they don't have the ability to differ these sets up. And I think that's huge, because when you do this cookie cutter approach, it just feels, like you said, Disney on Ice, neutered down. It didn't have the same identity, and that's sad.
Yeah, that's one thing I hope Tony Khan takes into the future. Not to bring the subject off of AEW or off to AEW, but I hope we get different stage designs for different shows. I want to see St. Patrick's Day Smash look different than a Dynamite. I want to see Battle of the Belts look different than a Rampage, or any of the above. Like, it's not. It's a very easy thing to do. You just bring a different production truck with it, set up a different stage. You know, it's not going to make or break the business side of things, and it's going to just make the fans feel like they're at something more special.
Yeah, and I feel like we'd be amiss if we didn't go in a little bit about WWE this Monday, where they did a best of episode of 2022 while they were live at MSG. What are your thoughts on that bullshit? That pissed me off.
Yeah, I mean, what a kick to the fans that can't make it to MSG, and that easy shit to show off. You throw a live feed in there and you're good to go. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, it was one of those things. It was just like the old school WWF, WWE would never have done that. They're going to give us the live content. I understand the appeal of keeping the live shows live, and you want to be, I don't know, make people want to see you in person. But it's not like there was a Raw happening elsewhere live. I get that. And you want to make MSG the house show. That's fine. But when there's like one or the other, you just do a tape thing where they're showing Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes in a Hell in a Cell while you're getting one of the hottest acts, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, going at it across the ring with the bloodline and all that stuff going on at MSG. It made no sense. Like, and don't use like financial things. Like, they're printing money. So you,
absolutely
cut some of that Saudi check out and bring the production crew to goddamn Madison Square Garden and put a live feed. Like, I didn't understand it. I didn't get it.
No, and the other thing about that too is like you have an opportunity. It's the holidays, right? You're showing off something. You could have made that a small 2-hour special. Take that third hour of Raw off. Maybe make the third hour of Raw the best of, but show that Madison Square Garden show. I bet you the reception for that would have been miles better, and it would have felt special. And you would have been like, "Damn, I miss." I miss when they would do things like this. You don't got Saturday Night Main Event and shit like that anymore. And those were this is a good moment to kind of do one of those, right? And don't need to worry about that. The third hour of Raw could have just been the Cody Rhodes. So this was the match voted fans voted match of the year. Here we go. We're going to show that, and then that'll be the main event for the thing. But you get to watch this special thing happening in New York. It's like the Rockettes, man. You need to have that flair where you come back to it and you're like, damn, I need to be there, or I need to watch it. If there's you can make fans want to be there, but also make fans feel like, oh, it's special that I'm watching this from home. And I don't think they do that anymore.
So just a quick insight into why I even realized that happened. I don't typically watch Raw live. I usually watch it on DVR, and we'll fast forward through the garbage that is inevitably on a 3-hour show because I have to fill gaps. But when I was on Instagram, shout out to Boulevard Bullies, he went live, and he was wherever in the arena filming, and it was Kevin Owens in the ring. Sami Zayn. I was like, oh shit, this is cool. This is Raw. I'm going to turn on Raw, and I turned it on, and it was Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. Like, what the hell is going on right now? And that's put 2 and 2 together, doing the MSG show. They're doing all the stuff that they talked about. And if you go way back when Cody Rhodes first came to WWE, people circled this event at MSG as the moment where he potentially could win the title. And obviously he's hurt, things changed, but I think everyone just assumed it would be where Raw was, because it's a Monday in New York at MSG, the world's most famous arena, where WWE's home base is. It's indisputably their home arena, and you choose not to run a live show there. It just felt hollow, and they're just like a cop-out. They punted on a Monday night, and they can do all they want. The longest running TV show in the history. Bullshit. That didn't count. I'm sorry. No. It didn't count. It didn't count. Now you guys start over. You start over.
It's bad for business, Eddie.
I don't know. Just wanted to go in a second on that. But with that being said, let's get our fix. We're going to talk about ECW Hardcore TV for a bit. We have a house show to talk about and get into all the good stuff from ECW 1995. All right, Hogan. So I love that we didn't change the bumpers at all. I love that.
No, we need them. They're nostalgic now.
I love it. So we have ECW presents Hardcore TV from June 20th, 1995. This is from the ECW arena. We had 3 matches that were shown on tape, obviously not live. We had the Vampire Warrior defeating Hack Myers, Beulah defeating Luna, and we had the tag team match, Taz and 2 Cold Scorpio defeating the Pitbulls and Raven in a handicap match. So these are all taped events. This is just to build storyline. And it's even more apparent how important these hardcore TVs are when you're reading the newsletter and you're reading from people that are like, I first watched Guerrero versus Malenko on a hardcore TV. So this is like although it sucks when we're going through this and it's like, oh, they're showing this again and again, you have to understand people don't have access to these tapes. Meltzer, who's as in tune with what's going on as ever, had to wait 2 months to get his hands on Hostile City Showdown. Just shows you where it's at.
Yeah. The generation of televised crap was not anywhere. We didn't have on-demand streaming, man. It was really, really slim pickings, if you will, back in '95.
So they were originally going to be showing the barbed wire match between Sandman and Cactus Jack, but they said they can't show it on TV because of the network, but you can order it on home video. It became sort of a plug to buy their home videos, which was awesome. And one of the final things we had, the ECW World Tag Team Champions, Public Enemy, are in the ring with the fans doing their arm taunt when their theme plays. Axel Rotten, they do the whole thing with Ian Rotten, with Bill Affonso. You guys remember that we talked about that. And then we get the debut of the Gangsters. So they wanted to show this on hardcore TV. So this was a very important moment that they wanted to make sure that their nationwide fan base can see. It wasn't just based on who was in tune with the product. So this was important to put it there. I agree with that. What it was at the end of the show, going off the air with the Gangsters kind of standing on top of Public Enemy.
Yeah, it was a moment, man.
All right, we moved to hardcore TV from 627. We only had 2 matches. Tommy Dreamer defeating Vampire Warrior, and then 911 defeated Jim Steele. This was the same match we got with Jim Steele from a while ago. This was his Jungle Jim Steele's Hardcore Encyclopedia debut. A little insight into Jim Steele. I did some research on him because I was like, who was he? He also competed in WCW 93, 94. He was pretty much brought in for heat associated with WCW wrestlers at the time. And I think that's what they're really going for. They want to make sure, similar to what Shane Douglas is doing with WWF, using them as a heat magnet. Jim Steele and other guys like Benetti, Tully Blanchard, those guys were used as heat magnets as well.
Hell yeah. I mean, you got to have it. You need your heat magnet jobber. Good way to do it.
So we also got a really cool promo with New Jack and Mustafa cutting on Public Enemy, and they were standing on top of a car. They say they were going to rule ECW. I thought that was really good. There was also a cool promo that Sandman was playing the heel as well. He was being the cocky, drunk guy. There really isn't anything of note, like not really worth watching. Maybe the New Jack and the Mustafa promo, but other than that, it's like kind of skippable.
Yeah, totally understandable. But I mean, you got to get the plug in for New Jack and Mustafa. You really got to start building them up. This is a good build up segment. You know, you get a taste of who they are.
So this is the other, not on the results. This was not aired on TV. This was not on Peacock. You can't find this anywhere. Available on Fan. There is a DVD out there of this event. It's called Mountaintop Madness. Did you know about this existing?
I have a very small knowledge of the fan tapes. I know the fan cams were being sold by RF Video. They might still be. I don't know if RF Video is even a thing anymore. But yeah, you could go buy like the encyclopedia of fan cams from ECW, and I knew this was on it. Never knew anything about it though.
So just a history lesson of the Mountaintop Madness. This is the first Mountaintop Madness produced by ECW on June 30th, 1995. It is the night before we're going to be having Hardcore Heaven. Just keep that in mind as I'm reading the results. The guys that are working back-to-back nights. This was held at the Flagstaff in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, 385 in attendance. And in quotations, a fan cam recording of the event was released on DVD. So again, you mentioned before a little bit of history on that. This was done by ECW, or was it someone that was filming illegally? This was obviously done by them, right?
I think it was. That's a good question. I think some of them were filmed by ECW. I think some of them were definitely filmed illegally, and they were maybe bought by ECW or attempted to be bought by ECW. Not too sure, but possibly RF Video bought them. I don't know. I don't recall ECW necessarily selling the fan cam events, but I don't put it past them.
All right, so obviously we both didn't watch this. I just have the results here, and I'm going to read them for you guys. It's the Pitbulls, Pitbull number 1 and Pitbull number 2, with Raven, Stevie Richards, and Bueller McGillicuddy in their corner, defeated Dino Sandoff and Donnie Allen by pinfall. So obviously the opening bout was a tag match. The Pitbulls won the bout in a squash, pinning Allen, following by aided superbomb for a pinfall. The Pitbulls, who at the time, they're members of Raven's Nest, who are accompanied by Raven, Stevie Richards, and Beulah during the match. Yeah, it's just a squash match. It's sort of what they've been doing with the Pitbulls. It was apparently short, 4 minutes and change. Kind of in tune with what they've been doing at the rest of the shows.
Yeah.
So we have Too Cold Scorpio defeating Hack Myers by pinfall. This was another squash between them. Too Cold hit a 450 splash. We had the other interesting match that happened in the third contest here. Chad Austin defeated Taz by disqualification. So I'm going to read you a little bit about what went on here. This was supposed to be Mikey Whipwreck, but he was unable to compete due to a separated shoulder. So they replaced him with Chad Austin, who sucker punched Taz upon entry just to kind of give the match a little bit of heat. After Taz knocked Austin out with the Tazplex, Bill Alfonso came in, disqualified him for striking his opponent before the bell. As Taz went to confront Alfonso, he was attacked by Too Cold Scorpio, which is his opponent for the Fallen Even at Hardcore Heaven, and injured his neck by giving him a tombstone piledriver followed by a somersault leg drop. Is this the moment where Taz gets hurt, or is this not? This isn't the broken neck, obviously, because he works the night after.
I don't think this is a shoot injury. I think it was just playing into the angle, especially going into the big match the next night. So we also had Axel and Ian Rodden wrestling again. This was a barbed wire baseball bat match. Again.
Again, yeah, exactly. So Axel got the win here. Who really cares? But they're going to be having their Taipei death match with the glass on their fist the night after, which I'm going to let you break down in depth. I think we should put some nice violin music behind it. This is what we've been waiting for.
Some ASMR ECW.
And the reason why we're even covering this here is the next match here. Raven and Stevie Richards defeated the Public Enemy, Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock by pinfall to win the championship belt. So the things that happened in this match are interesting. I wish I could check this out because this is a huge moment. Probably it's an interesting matchup between the four of these guys, different styles, but interesting decision to put the titles on Raven and Stevie Richards. I knew they were champions. I couldn't see them beating Public Enemy, and I guess we're never going to see it. But I guess what are your thoughts about them pulling the trigger on Raven and Stevie so quickly?
Interesting, especially because, I mean, you got New Jack coming in the feud with Public Enemy. You'd think they would want that tag titles to be in the tag title big picture, right? It's almost like pulling the strap off of Austin and throwing it on Kurt Angle and saying, well, Austin and the Rock can still fight, but Kurt Angle's going to have the championship, so it's weird, but I good for storytelling purposes, I guess. Very interested to see what happens with it too, because I don't recall too much of their tag run, but I do recall them having the belts. But yeah, very interesting. Weird that they would do it right before, the big show too, because like you're taking that moment away from the fan base, I guess, because nobody's going to see this, before they actually show the big show. So you're missing out on a lot of context, right?
It was also interesting to put the titles on the night before a big event. Like, what were the thoughts on that, especially with Public Enemy and the Gangstas working? Maybe they didn't want. I don't know. It makes no sense, especially when you're bringing the Gangstas in for a huge feud, a blood feud with the established big tag team in ECW. I'll trust the process of what Paul had in mind, but it was certainly an interesting approach to what they did.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So the ending of the match saw Raven and Richards defeated Public Enemy to win the titles when Richards pinned Rocco Rock after the Gangstas interfered, hitting Rock with a pipe and dragging an unconscious Richards on top of Rock. So an attempt by the referee to reverse the decision due to interference was in turn overturned by Bill Alfonso. Following the match, Richards issued an open challenge prompting 911 to come out to the ring, chokeslam Raven and Richards. After Alfonso confronted him, 911 chokeslammed him as well. So a big moment too that wasn't really given to the fans. Someone put their hands on Alfonso for the first time, and we didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see I don't know. It just seems like this could have been done at Hardcore Heaven where people were going to be seeing it in a bigger audience. The convention was in town.
No, for sure. But maybe they just didn't want to show it because of that, taking that moment away from the fan base. I think it was too early to pull the trigger on like 911 chokeslam Bill Alfonso. So maybe they're holding it off for, a big televised thing or whatever. But I think they didn't want to rob the fans of that yet, because we'll see during the show. Bill Alfonso is still up to his fuckery, and if not worst case, So
the main event here was the Sandman with Woman in his corner defeating Tommy Dreamer by pinfall to retain the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. So before the match, Raven and Stevie Richards got involved, attacked Dreamer as he approached the ring, injuring his hand, which comes into play the night after with Hardcore Heaven. Sandman won the bout after his manager, Woman, distracted Dreamer, enabling Sandman to strike him in his injured hand with the Singapore cane, and then pin Dreamer using the small package to retain the championship. Obviously not time to put the title on Dreamer here. He never actually gets the championship, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. What are your thoughts? I mean, we'll talk about Sandman's run and his defense against Cactus Jack yet again. But upon rewatching the Sandman and seeing what he's bringing to the product, are you underwhelmed? Do you feel like he's sort of in line with what you remember? Or do you feel like, I don't know, people gloss over a lot of the flaws he has?
I think it's a good mix of all three. He's a little underwhelming of a wrestler to begin with, but he still does live up to. But he still does live up to the hype behind him, because I mean that's his gimmick, is to come out there, smash a beer can on his head, hit a guy with the kendo stick, and get the fuck out of there. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? You're not getting a technical wrestler. You're not getting a Rob Van Dam or Jerry Lynn. You're getting this fucking guy. Like you're getting your Uncle Ted that shows up to the barbecue like 2 hours late, and he's already pissed drunk, and he's like, "Hey man, grab a beer." Like that's his whole gimmick. I'm cool with it though. I have no heat with it. I'm enjoying it. It's still the Sandman. I think he's much like the booze he's drinking. It probably gets better with age. The later run of Sandman is much more mythological. You know, you feel his presence in the more better produced era of ECW, if that's even a correct way to put it. But I think once they hit TNN and shit like that, like the Sandman is great. Like you love it. Like you hit fucking Under Sandman, let him come out, cane a bunch of dudes, like much like New Jack. You know, all you need, you turn on NWA, New Jack's out there, he's stabbing people, you're having a good time. So the Sandman had the same appeal. You know, you throw Metallica on, he comes out, chugs a beer, smacks a fucking couple guys, rolls out of the ring, we're done. I think Paul learned that too. He doesn't need to be a 5-star wrestler. He just needs to be this 10-minute segment. We're great. Done. Call it a night.
Yeah, I think there was some pressure with the world title on him, that maybe people expected him to be something he wasn't. And I think, like you mentioned, later in time, they figured out the right formula for Sandman and what was his best place on the card and what to do to deodorize some of the stuff that was not great in his act. And
yeah,
I think he was really exposed here this year. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because there's some certain wrestlers on this card where he is in line with the same guys. It's not like he's the only guy not working that huge style. And maybe that's also highlighted by the fact we got Guerrero, we got Malenko, we got Benoit doing their thing. But that's not to say that there's not a place on the card for him. I just think when you even watch a guy like, Tommy Dreamer, who is more of a classically trained professional wrestler, even Cactus Jack has a different appeal to him. And Sandman pulls out some moves where you're like, wow, that was pretty impressive. I think there's a spot in that Cactus Jack match where he jumped, I think he hurdled all the ropes. That was pretty goddamn impressive.
Yeah.
It didn't look smooth. The leg drops don't look precise. But like you said, I think that's part of the appeal. He feels like a fan with Zubas on, jumped in the ring and started wrestling. And he's like, wow, this guy can hold his own. I think that's sort of why people like him.
Yeah, and he had cool merch, like the Budweiser shirt with him holding the 100%. Kendo stick. Like, yeah, you fall into it. Especially, I mean, I faintly remember my parents wearing like shitty Marlboro merchandise and stuff in the 90s. So like it felt like home. Like, oh, Uncle Carl's here. What's up, Uncle Carl? Let's go. Pour me a beer, will you?
And it's also, I think Sandman and Public Enemy are probably two of the best cases of Paul Heyman being the best promoter for his talent and getting them life-changing money. Public Enemy did their act, and to the point where people felt like the buzz on the internet and the buzz in the dirt sheets were that these were the hottest act. And when they got there, it was underwhelming. WCW, WWF, we talked about it before. Sandman, same thing as well, where he came over to WCW as Hack. You're like, I'm sure everyone looked around like, what the fuck? Like, this is the guy we wanted. And same thing, WWE, they let him do his thing, because like he did the one night stand thing. He was still Sandman. But yeah, when you watch him, if it's not in the environment in this test tube of ECW, it loses its allure. And I think Public Enemy and Sandman are the best examples of it. I'm sure there's other guys that I'm missing here, but there's a reason why ECW and Sandman went hand in hand. And like, if you just throw this character in WCW in 1995, no one probably would have kind of gravitated towards it. And I think that's important to recognize as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he needed time to grow from this version of Sandman we're seeing now. I mean, with 97 Sandman, completely different ballgame. that's when you're getting the love. Like you're like, holy shit! Like you fall for it. You know, you're like you're trapped in the character now, as opposed to watching this guy like do these really shitty leg drops on chairs and just like wrap his stomach up in barbed wire and whatnot. But he, like I said, they do finally figure that roadmap out for him. What really works, when to send him out. You know, cut the lights, Sandman's out there, boom. Again, 10-minute segment. You're done. That's all you fucking need.
So let's do a shitty leg drop into July 1st, 1995. ECW Hardcore Heaven, live from the ECW Arena, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Our current champs are as followed. The world champion is the Sandman. He won it back on April 15th, 1995. Our world tag team champions are brand new. It's Raven and Stevie Richards, 6/30/95. They won it the night before at Mountaintop Madness. And our world TV champion is Eddie Guerrero, who is absent because he was, we haven't seen him. He's been MIA in Japan. So, you know, these are our champs. Pretty good crop of them. I'm excited for what happens with the world title picture. I think a nice change following Sandman is going to be very welcomed, and I can't wait to see. Won't spoil who wins it, but I'm very excited to see their run and their program with the aforementioned Steve Austin, as we mentioned earlier in the show. Steve Austin getting an ECW world title shot so early on in his emergence. I mean, he only does like, 5 months in ECW, maybe less, right? Because Steve Austin's only there for, or you want to talk about a cup of coffee. This dude sipped it, it got cold, and then he just tossed it out.
It got stone cold.
That's exactly. That's how he came up with the name, by the way. That's a
goddamn.
God damn it. All right. So with the Internet Wrestling Convention in town, this is a sellout show. People are pretty much hanging from the rafters. They're just super excited to be there. And you can just tell as soon as Joey Styles introduces that this is going to be a fun show.
Yeah. No, I love the in-ring, start off Joey out there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joey Styles. Like you fall in love with it. Like he's such a dweeb looking character, but like he fit the mold for what he was going out there to do. I love Joey Styles. I think he is one of the most underrated but overrated commentators, personnel. Like he was so good, and I loved him every time they brought him back. Like with WWE, it was just the best. Like you never had a bad time watching wrestling when Joey Styles was on the mic.
Well, I think he's another guy I didn't mention before. Same thing, Public Enemy, Sandman. Even Joey Styles got a nice payday from WWE for that short period of time where he was the voice of Raw. Or maybe the production and the lore of ECW and Paul Heyman's genius created, not taking away from what Joey Styles was able to do, it created this background, I don't know, this appeal to these guys that when they went elsewhere, and they still carry with them. With any of these guys can go any autograph signing convention with the ECW banner flying behind them. You know, just always, it's always going to be behind them. And the whole energy of what this movement was, they have forever. And these guys are think about the crop of guys that just did the reunion a few weeks back, guys like RVD, Sabu, Rhino, those guys will always have the good part of ECW to lean on for the latter half of their careers.
Absolutely.
So let's go to the opening match here. We have Dudley, Snot Dudley with Big Dick Dudley in the corner, taking on the Pitbulls with Raven, Stevie, and Beulah. So I'll let you talk about this match, but just to make it clear, this is the debut of the Dudley family. There's no Bubba, there's no Devon, but they are wearing the tie-dyes, the overalls. They are introduced being from the hills of Charleston, Pennsylvania, so that's probably some sort of dig to Pennsylvania being like an inbred type of area.
It's about an hour outside of Dudleyville, to be honest. Just so we're aware, like locational wise, Dudleyville's right over there.
This had me doing a whole bunch of research about the Dudley family and about what happened with Bubba and Devon, and we'll certainly get into that because we will see them emerge here eventually. But with Dudley and Snot Dudley being here as the first original Dudleys, what were your initial thoughts on this match? Go through what happened here and just, I guess, talk about the fact that they got an upset win over the Pitbulls.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest shocker here is that, somebody got a huge upset, be it not our Bubba Ray, our Spike, our Devon, but we got Dudley, who is named after his great-great-granddaddy Dudley of the way yonder, and then we got Snot Dudley. Both fall in line with the kind of hippie anti-90s culture going on, and then you get Big Dick Dudley, who's probably the biggest dick of them all. He's the best. I feel like Joe Gerner right now. well. But no, it's very cool to see the first inception of the Dudleys. I like how they just name them so randomly, like Dudley, Snot Dudley, Big Dick Dudley. I think we get maybe like 2 or 3 more before we get like the finalized Dudley package, right? But not the most impressive match. Very, very fun to watch, though. And like you said, the Dudleys got a surprise victory over the Pitbulls. Not bad. It wasn't great. Good starter for the show. A lot of good back and forth between the Pitbulls and the Dudleys, but not the Dudleys that we so crave for. We're not looking for 3Ds here. We're looking at like 2 Cs and a B.
So before I get into the debut of a very familiar face that we just talked about that happened in the middle of this match, are you a camo Dudley guy or a tie-dye overalls Dudley guy?
Tie-dye overalls, bandanas. Give me the thick frame glasses and Bubba with the stutter. I don't think it got any better than that. I mean, trust me, the camo was great, but it was a watered-down Dudley. And for how good they were, that's saying something, because those damn Dudleys were great.
Also, so I mentioned that we had a debut, and this was, so Stevie Richards was chatting with a front row admirer who turns out to be Francine. He kisses her, and then we get a full-blown cat fight between Beulah and the future Francine. Stevie and Beulah get, and then Raven came out and was pissed about this. Grabbed both of them by the hair, Stevie and Beulah, dragged them to the back, and then that's when we get the upset win. We've got the super bomb to Snot. We think the Pitbulls are going over. The Pitbulls are calling out Raven. He's nowhere to be found. Dudley lowers the bloom on Pitbull number 2, puts Snot on top for the upset win. 5 minutes and 52 seconds. Pitbulls call Stevie names. And that's it. I mean, weird ending here. Maybe they thought these 2 Dudleys would be the iteration that would go on to be, I don't know, maybe a big part of their tag division. But I wonder where Dudley is now and Snot Dudley are, where like, now you think of the Dudleys, you think about Bubba and Devon, and rightfully so. Maybe you think of Spike, but these guys are nowhere to be found. But this was a huge faction, a huge family that they had, that Bubba and Devon were just a small part of it, but they rose well past this. This would be like, I can't even think of another faction that started with 2 guys that didn't even exist to what people remember. If you ask the Dudley people who the Dudleys are, they're never going to say Snot Dudley. Never.
No, never, ever. And that's the thing. I think I love the concept. It's like Cletus from The Simpsons. You know, you got like a million different family members under one belt. And of course, once they got Devon and Bubba and Spike, it kind of had like the Three Stooges effect. Like, but obviously with a hint of violence, good violence, not just, you know, pulling the noses and poking the eyes, but they had that charm to them. And I think that's what made them rise above the rest of them. Obviously Bubba is an amazing character before and after like his debut, because when he comes out, he's kind of like a big fat stupid guy, you know, and he's just like, you know, he's got the stutter going on and everything. These Dudleys have no character whatsoever. Right. They are just 2 dudes wearing the tie-dye. Big Dick Dudley is the surviving member of the early inception of the Dudleys, because Big Dick hangs around for a while, rightfully so. He's got a look you fall in love with.
He has a really nice look. He has a good look. He's the perfect heater for whatever tag team. He looks great.
And like that's the thing. Like I feel like once they got the Three Stooges aspect behind them, that's when they really could start planning on how to make them bigger and bigger, and which we did. I mean, Bubba turns into this huge heel. You know, calling out fans left and right, like really, really big heat seeker. But to see that this is where it starts with Snot and Dudley, it's kind of wild, right?
Yeah, so that leads us into our next match. We had Dino Sendoff and Donnie Allen taking on the Broad Street Bully and Chad Austin. This is a no contest because I'm assuming and I hope that this match was bad on purpose. They botched everything. The crowd is chanting, "You both suck, you fucked up." They just were all over this match to the point where not even 90 seconds in, we get 911 coming out, Paul Lee swaggering behind him, and obviously chokeslams all these guys. At the end of the segment, we get Bill Alfonso sneaking from behind the curtain. So this was a nice, I guess, break in between the match, and they've been doing this a lot. The Broad Street Bully last month was taking on the Jersey Devil, trying to get the hometown crowd behind him. But they're using bad wrestling to get a reaction when it's ended. And I think that's also really smart. That's like they are willing to sacrifice some parts on the crowd, of the card, to get the crowd behind them when 911 comes out, and it's getting him more over. 911 is like absolutely one of the more over acts that I don't think people talk about enough.
I think that's why they call him 911, because when shit goes wrong, you call 911, right? And so he comes out to the ring, and he's the guy that's, you got the shitty stand up on stage. He comes out with the cane and kind of drags him off. But in this instance, it's his hands, and he's choke slamming people left and right. I love a good shitty segment like this, because this match could have easily been like tore the whole pay-per-view down a level. But Paulie comes out with 911 and just destroys it. That's what makes it fun, man.
So the next match here, it's Hack Myers taking on Big Mally. Oh. Big Mally's another big fat guy that we are introduced to here. Looks like Fat Bastard from Austin Powers.
Way ahead of his time.
Exactly. So inconceivably, this match goes over 6 minutes. 6 minutes and 18 seconds. I don't even think we should waste time talking about it. Hack Myers gets the win after an elbow drop and lays his arm on Mally for the 3 count.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. I mean, the crowd did like Hack Myers. They reacted to him in a big way where they were chanting, "You fat fuck" to Big Mally. They were really involved in this match. But maybe it was one of those things that was better live, but I just don't understand, given this match over 6 minutes, it seems like a waste of time.
Yeah, I think the appeal of this match was so they had moments to say like "you fat fuck," like it was just it was a heckling match, so it had its purpose. Way too long. I didn't give a shit. There was no like love for the I was just like whatever. I could easily fast forward this, and I probably should have.
So I'll let you cover the next match here. It's the new Taz. Oh. This is the second week that we're seeing the new Taz taking on Too Cold Scorpio. They really hyped up this match the night before. They're saying they were using Mountaintop Madness as TV, but if we're going to see it weeks removed from this, what's the point of building up this match? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. Lead us through this match. I mean, this is a really cool match on paper, and I think it delivered. It really did.
I think it did too. Scorpio, comes out. He's wearing the orange and black to mock Taz. Almost, it was like you said at the show the night before. Kind of like if you're seeing these all out of context, it just kind of fucks the whole thing up, right? But Scorpio comes out. This is a very technical, headlock match. Both guys trying to go for suplex after suplex. Really good, man. I mean, Taz hits a fucking beautiful belly to belly. Scorpio hits some crazy ass fucking leg drops here. But I mean, you get a good amount of locking up, good like technical mat wrestling, which I was shocked to see coming out of Too Cold Scorpio, but also not shocked as we all know Too Cold Scorpio does not fucking play around. But the Taz, he gets what's it called? The Tazplex under him. No sells the shit out of it. You get the 1, 2, 3. Scorpio's got his foot on the bottom ropes. That was like 8 minutes of it, right? But we're not done. Bill Alfonso comes out. He comes out, does his, "Hey, listen here, Daddy. We're gonna reverse the rules here, man. This ain't going down." Much like Bill Alfonso does. Threatens to shut down shit again. Paul comes out. Paul gets in his face. Fonzie says, if any wrestler on the card, wants to hit me, I'll get this promotion shut down. And great Paul, "Oh, if any wrestler on the card touches you, you're going to shut the promotion down? Well, I'm going to whoop your ass." And he starts taking his gimmicks off. But then Too Cold Scorpio comes in from behind with a steel chair and knocks Taz. And then Paul turns around like shocked, and Fonzie fucking takes out Paulie. It was beautiful. Great heat set. It was just a beautiful heat-seeking setup. So damn good. Too Cold Scorpio eventually gets the win here, and the bullshit win, right? Fozzie's him and Fozzie are in cahoots. He must be related to that dick Nick Patrick, because this fucking referee shenanigans is bullshit. But this was great. I loved every bit of this. I thought it was very, very awesome setup, good storytelling, fun, good shit. And I do really, really like that they're giving Too Cold Scorpio some love. The one thing I did want to bring up was that beautiful leg drop off the top rope onto Taz. Like, motherfucker has hops. Michael Jordan can't even get that high. Either could Dennis Rodman for a different way. It was amazing.
It was certainly, there's two moments in this match that I kind of circled here. And one was the utilization of the storytelling metric of using Fonzie to have both these guys go over. And I'm sure in the booking meeting, it was hard to decide who's going over here. And you got Taz, who is the big bad. You want him to be built as a main eventer, but also Too Cold Scorpio is held in high regard too. So you're
Yeah.
rocking a hard place by utilizing Bill Alfonso in this way. You sort of branch out and you can make decisions and do these screwy finishes without alienating your audience. And we look at this spot here, the spot where Scorpio delivered the tombstone pile driver, hit the tumbleweed flipping leg drop, and Taz no sold it. That was a huge, because Taz becomes that guy who's just unstoppable, going to run through a brick wall. He no sells the finish by Scorpio, which was probably a really nice thing that Scorpio did for him, and hit the Tazplex for the 3. Looks like it's over, 8 minutes and whatever. And then you got all the shenanigans you mentioned before after the fact. I thought this is really well done because you kind of, fulfill 2 goals and please 2 masters. You get 2 Cold Scorpio looking like gold. You got Taz looking like gold. Taz has some sympathy behind him because he got screwed in the second half of the match. I'm really digging the fact that we get a heel Scorpio as well. And yeah, I would love to see these 2 guys go at it night after night. You want to pair these guys up any single night, I'm going to watch it. They crushed it. It was great.
No, 100%. And the best part of like a match like this, the way they set it up, is the amount of storytelling that goes through it. Like you said, Taz gets this sympathy for getting screwed over. You get to see him no sell shit where you're like, wow, this badass dude, man, holy shit. Then you get the Fozzy shit on top of it, which is great. He comes out doing just this bullshit. You finally see Paul attempt to take a swing at it. Like, you're seeing so much. This is what ECW does really well when they do it really well. And it's cramming so much turns and corners into one match, one segment that, like, you're like, by the time it's over, you're like, holy shit, so much just happened. It was amazing. And this is one of those, like, this is the peak of what ECW does right.
Absolutely. And I think, like I mentioned before, I want to make sure that we drive it home that having the Bill Alfonso effect to utilize as the scapegoat when decisions have to be made to be, I don't know, like the WCW DQ finishes, that's a storytelling metric that it's a versatile way of telling and advancing your stories. And people don't like it. But when you put all the heat on one person, it becomes, all right, now this guy's going to get the heat. He's more of a heel, and we can still tell the story we want to tell and not be booked in a corner. And I think we talked about it before. AEW does they have a difficult time doing that because they don't have someone to take the heat. There's no person on screen who's the leadership. There's no commissioner. There's no one like that you can't. Sometimes you have a decision to make, and it's hard because they're not going to do DQ. They promise fans they won't. They use it very sparingly. And when you don't have the DQ as an out, sometimes it can really stunt momentum. And the fact that they had this out here to have both these guys go over in a way without doing a DQ, because you could put the heat on a Bill Alfonso, it really makes the program a little more dynamic. And I think that's what you lend yourself by having an on-screen, we call him a heat seeker. Bill Alfonso lends itself really well to advance in the story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
All right, so now we have Joey Styles in the ring. He talks about call the ECW Wrestling Hotline for details on Shane Douglas. Shane comes out wearing the WWF shirt. The crowd is all in on him leaving. They're singing the goodbye song. Shane gets on the mic. He says he's too good for ECW. He's sick of showing everyone in the locker room why he's the greatest wrestler in the world. And he's sick of the fans, and he doesn't get the respect he deserves. The typical heel promo. The crowd starts a "We Want Flair" chant. And eventually a woman comes out and confronts Douglas. She calls Shane the smartest man she knows. She doesn't think Shane is going anywhere and makes him a proposition to join her and Sandman so they can rule the world. So Douglas puts her over as being the most well-endowed female he's ever seen. Woman slaps him across the face, and he enjoyed it, it seemed. And then Douglas drops to his knees and asks for another slap to the face. Douglas catches her arm and starts to threaten her until Sandman makes the save. In order to not turn Sandman babyface, they had Cactus Jack running in, chasing Sandman and Woman away. So this is also a very unique way of keeping things the way they're supposed to be while advancing the story. We talk about the newsletter. Shane Douglas isn't going anywhere, but they're utilizing. He's wearing the WWF shirt. God damn it. He's utilizing WWF as a magnet for getting all the boos and making sure people understand he's a heel. And this was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I love the fact that they played very well with that. Like, it was always like, oh, don't forget the big guys are out there. I could go there anytime I want. Like, it really draws where you're like, man, fuck this guy. So like you feel the heel when it's happening, and it's the best too, because like fucking Shane Douglas is such a great talker, such a guy. He's so smart when the way he words his shit, the way he talks. Like even when they were like, "We want Flair," he's like, "Oh, you know that old prick ain't coming to Philadelphia anytime soon." Like it's beautiful, man. Very very good segment. Love the in and outs of all of it. Definitely worth checking out. Absolutely.
So that leads us into the World Tag Team Championship on the line. The new champions, Raven and Stevie Richards, with Beulah in their corner, defending against Tommy Dreamer and Luna Vachon. I'll let you lead your way through this. This is also very akin to what we see in GCW, what we see in the Indies, what we see across different promotions. This is an intergender match. Although they didn't get the win here, Luna was competing for what was typically a man's championship. And this is progressive thinking, progressive booking. And this leads the way, trailblazes for, women like Allie Katch, women like, Slamovich, Tessa Blanchard, women down the line that are now competing with men. Luna was paving the way.
No, absolutely. And what a pleasure it is to see her out here. I think Luna's very underrated. And this really helps like back that up. She was so good in WWF. She's great here. It's just awesome to see her kind of out there with Tommy Dreamer. It's just so fun. But this is a really fun match all over the place. Good back and forth between both teams. Very cool to see the intergender match kind of taking place. You get a lot of good spots out of it, a lot of good shenanigans out of it, like much you would expect from ECW. Beulah's all over the place. So good. There's even a fucking powder spot, which I'm a sucker for shit like that. You get a good powder shot. I'll pop for it every time. But Stevie eventually pins Luna for the 3 count, and in the missionary style, akin to very very akin to an Edge and Lita performance to familiarize you and bring it back up to date. But all over the place, very very fun. It felt like a GCW match. It had that vibe to it. It felt like I was watching Bussy, take on any contenders. It was so fucking good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention China as well, where 4 years removed from this, she's beating Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental Championship. She's in the Royal Rumble with the men and doing the thing where she does, but Luna Vachon did it first. And I think that's a big piece of where wrestling's going. And we talk about GCW's legacy eventually down the line. It's hard for us to see it now, but I think GCW's legacy will be continuing what ECW started with the intergender wrestling, because you would never know this was an intergender match, because we've seen intergender matches across different promotions. Specifically, you want to talk about WWE or WCW when they do it. They make sure only the women can wrestle the women. They make sure to draw the heat where a woman gets attacked by the man. But this is not the case here. We get brawling all over the arena where Luna is wrestling the man as if she's just another competitor. And I think that's also probably was different for people to watch. They didn't have the same understanding we have today. But, even talk about someone like Mina Yamashita from GCW being the ultra violent champion. She goes out there and can beat anybody on any given day. And it's because of things like this would set the stage. And I think eventually we would have gotten there, but it just shows how progressive and how willing Paul Heyman was to be different. And that's a big thing to recognize. I think this match, although it was 7 minutes and 25 seconds of, it felt like just a tag team title defense, it was way more than that. And I think that is a huge step in the right direction for not only women's wrestling, but intergender wrestling at large.
Yeah. And I mean, we've brought it up slightly in the past episodes, but I mean, it's so crazy to see how well accepted it is this early, how much it was trailblazing, how impactful it was, because I think this is the part of ECW that's not talked about way enough. And it's the fact that they let the girls go out there and hold their own with the guys. Very, very, very progressive, very how it should be. It's like, I'm happy to see it. And it's so cool that we got to get to cover this, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people will ever bring up. I think this is huge. As much as ECW is known for the badass wrestling, the violence, the fact that the women are so prominent in the storytelling and also having matches doing huge shit here, it speaks volumes. ECW was so on the pulse of things and so ahead of the times. It's insane, man.
And this may have been one of those things that people weren't ready to accept, and that's why we see it blossoming here in 2021, 2022, 2023 eventually, where women are now considered, and they're taking independent dates, and they're wrestling men. I mentioned before, just here in the Northeast, we got New Fear City, we had Gabriel Sky and Allie Katch tearing the house down. And you see women, going back to remarkable wrestling, they have a woman in all these Riot qualifier matches, and there's, typically they're just treated like another competitor. And this is just one instance in one independent in one area of the world. And this is happening all over the place. GCW leading the way, where a star like Allie Katch has built her brand by going toe to toe with men in the ring. She's not being used as just a beautiful woman, and that she is a beautiful woman, but it's like she's looked at as a badass. Where the latest picture she has on Instagram is her all bloodied up. She is an inspiration to women and men across different platforms to just chase their dreams. And it's not, you don't want to be pigeonholed into being Trish Stratus or being a valet. Like, no, you could do things across different promotions that are willing to accept it. And GCW is just carrying that torch that ECW sort of lit, like that's what we're at right now.
No, and it's crazy that this is in 1995. And like, I mean, you go 3 years into the future, most women you're seeing on television are the Godfather's hoes, like,
right.
And like, how backpedaling is that for, like, why didn't anybody else pick up on how great this was? It's just fucking mind-boggling to me.
Do you think we're going to be seeing, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but do you think we're going to be seeing intergender wrestling in a way that we're seeing on GCW and ECW here in 95 in WWE on a main stage? Like a woman like Charlotte doing a program with like a guy like Roman Reigns. I'm not saying those two specifically, but main eventing a WrestleMania with an intergender title match. Do you see that ever happening in our lifetime?
I don't know about WWE. I my heart's there. I would love to see it happen. I absolutely would. But I mean, what was the tag show that they had that was on YouTube? Mixed match tag,
right? Yeah, like a strange bedfellows type of thing where they're just like mixing matching. Yeah,
yeah, but it was done in the shitty way WWE would do things. We're like, you tagging the woman and the other woman's got to come in. Like, you can't have the two mingling. Like, give me 5 minutes of Becky Lynch beating the piss out of Braun Strowman. I would fucking pop my ass off for it, and it would put over so much how tough these women are, way more than they already do. And I just think it would sell so fucking well. I don't think we'll ever. I would hope to see it, but I don't think we'll ever see it like that. I don't think we'll see, the man versus the head of the table anytime soon.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because it's certainly looking like the smaller promotions are moving towards that, where women, GCW is the biggest one leading the force. But like I mentioned before, there's independent promotions out there where women are the world champions and they're defending it or they're challenging for titles as they're being booked. So I don't know. Usually WWE's like probably, 3, 4, 5 years late. So maybe we'll see a reaction to it 5 years down the line. But with Triple H at the helm, you think it'd be a little bit quicker to react because he's more progressive and more in touch with the independents. So it should be interesting to watch how you manage that, especially in a publicly traded company on a mass network where you have to kind of ease your fans into it, because those casual fans are going to be like a little bit confused about what they've been indoctrinated for their whole life about mixed tag wrestling, what it should look like in their brain.
Yeah, I think if done on the WWE scale and they do it correctly, it might be the best thing ever. And I'll give that to them. I think they could make it really, really good. Because can you imagine, like, Charlotte Flair getting a roll up on, AJ Styles, and like the crowd just loses their shit, because it would happen. Like, it would be a jaw dropping moment to see happen. And it would have been cool if they did it like a Rumble. Like, have like Charlotte sneak into the Rumble or something, win the fucking Rumble, the men's Rumble. It sucks that they have everything so separated. I think that's what takes away from it. Like when Chyna did it, it made Chyna the fucking big, oh, you can't fuck with her character. She came in, she eliminated like 6 people in the Rumble, like.
Right.
Now it's like, what are you going to do with it? You can make it work. I would be interested to see where it happens. Cool.
So we'll put a bookmark in that conversation. We'll go to the promo here. The Pitbull's coming out. They're told to super bomb Luna, and they refuse. Stevie Pie faces Pitbull number 1, and Raven blasts Pitbull number 2 at a chair. The Pitbulls refuse to listen to these guys, and then Raven receives a double suplex. When they try to super bomb Stevie, the Dudley brothers run out for the save. So as the Pitbulls split off with the Dudleys, the original 4 people started brawling again as they fight all over the arena. So the Pitbulls and Tommy Dreamer hold up Luna Vachon on their shoulders as the crowd chants ECW. So that was like kind of segmented where they just like popped it in, where it seems like it happened later in the show. It wasn't directly after the match.
Yeah.
So they just kind of did like that fizzy screen where it fizzled out. And then they got, I guess, put us back in the spot that was later in the show.
Yeah, those jumps are crazy too. Sometimes they're really hard to follow. Sometimes they just blend right in. You're like, oh, okay.
So we got Todd Gordon calling out Bill Alfonso. He says he's been enforcing the rules so much, he'll be the referee for the Taipei death match, which has no rules. Lead us in here at Ian and Axel Rotten going at it in the infamous match here. We're going to get the end of this sadomasochistic type of match. Blood everywhere. Lead us through, Belcaster. I've been waiting all week for this.
Oh, yes. So we finally get to the I think the feud that we can't wait to be over, right? we're excited to get these two off of our screens for a while in any manner whatsoever, but it's good. So both guys make their way out to the ring. They're showing off the fists with the glass on them, and like you can tell how barbaric it is. The crowd's fucking losing their shit. They slightly start going after each other. Alfonso's out there. He's trying to shut shit down already. He's not happy about it. He's just like, no, man. We're done with this. Yeah, we get the gangsters out there. Public Enemy. They're just, I don't know what happened. They just start brawling. The match is still supposed to be going on. This is typical, like, what the fuckery on ECW's part, but the cops and security come out. They're starting to break up the guys. Fonzie's trying to get these guys arrested. He's like, no, listen here, Daddy. Arrest these dudes, man. We got to get going on. So after this, he's trying to shut down everything at this point. Todd Gordon comes out, says, fuck this. This match is happening. And it is most Todd Gordon voice. No, we're going to come out here and we're going to have our Taipei death match. So these guys literally just beat the piss out of each other. I mean, this is as barbaric as it gets. I don't think we even see, I mean, we see some crazy shit on GCW, so I'm not going to say the Taipei death match is the most barbaric thing in the world, but in 1995, just bear with me. This is some fucking hardcore shit. They're literally, you can see the glass penetrating skin, and even with their bad video quality that they had in ECW, both guys are just, they're bleeding like fucking pigs or shit, and they're just, I mean, they're smacking the hell out of each other. Yeah, Axel gets the win. It was really barbaric, and what I told you, it was the payoff. This is the payoff we got. This is your cage match in ECW, right? It's a Taipei death match.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. I mean, this match was 9 minutes and 13 seconds. It was absolute brutality. You mentioned the Gangsters and Public Enemy fighting in the aisleway, and I'm not sure exactly what that played a part of.
It was from a different arena.
This was like, Alfonso wanted to end the match saying Ian's vision is impaired because he was bleeding too much into it, which
he was.
I don't know. Yeah,
there was a lot of blood, man.
I'd rather see Bad Breed just team up again. Like, I just put them as a tag team. Like, let's put them together. Yeah, maybe this is the end of it. Maybe that's it. But like, what? I mean, I know Axel's gonna be challenging for the world title soon, but like, you kind of, what else are these guys gonna do? I don't know.
No, absolutely. And there's not much more they can do. I mean, and the crazier shit is these guys got fucking glass tape to their thing. They're still bringing out thumbtacks and shit. Like, you're losing all fucking credibility of like, yeah, sure, you're tough, but at some point you're just fucking stupid. Like, put it down, man. Like, right. Go out there. But I mean, this is, I think, the peak of Ian Rotten's career. Axel Rotten, I know he goes on to team up with Balls Mahoney down the line, but he doesn't do too much more than that. Like, this is their best feud they have. I mean, I don't know. The most I remember Axel Rotten is taking chair shots when Balls Mahoney wasn't. Yeah, like, that's it.
So that leads us into the World Championship match, which doesn't main event, by the way. So that's also
again.
Yeah, it doesn't main event. So it's Sandman and Cactus Jack for the third straight ECW arena show with both these guys. Their feud's been building up, and I know this is a placeholder. We mentioned in the newsletter that this was supposed to be Terry Funk versus Cactus Jack, and I'm sure Sandman was going to defend, or maybe not defend, against somebody else. But we're getting Sandman, Cactus Jack. I feel like they're just literally doing this match over and over again until Terry Funk is ready. But I guess to mix things up, Sandman has the Singapore cane. Cactus Jack has his arm wrapped in barbed wire to use as a weapon. So Woman also has a Singapore cane at ringside, just, at this point. So keep you guys aware. As we mentioned, this was supposed to be Terry Funk versus Cactus Jack, but he's resting his back for the IWA Deathmatch Tour in August, where he would face, of all people, Cactus Jack. So I'm sure kind of upsets Paul Heyman that he's going to be, all right, we're going to finally get a payoff between Cactus and Terry Funk, but it's happening in Japan and IWA. I'm sure he would have loved to have the death match here in ECW. Maybe the rules are different because they do a lot of crazy shit in Japan with the exploding barbed wire that is truly well beyond what we saw at Moxley and Omega. But this match was interesting for sure. I mean, we got him smoking a cigarette before. Most of Sandman's appeal is theatrics prior to the match, as we were well aware of.
In the Zubas.
In the Zubas, yes.
You're gonna love the Zuba.
Sandman leaping over the top rope, again, looked like shit, but just the fact that he did it, because if anyone's been in a wrestling ring, and I've actually been in the exact ring that they're in right here, because I'm, NYWC Sportatorium is the proud owner of that ECW ring, the exact same ring that was traveling from Philadelphia. Mikey Whipwreck donated it to Deer Park, New York. So that ring, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know, maybe if I'm drinking a little bit and I can get some momentum, I can jump over, but he cleared it. Like, I know Sandman's a big dude, but this was impressive. It wasn't smooth by any means, but it had me like, oh shit, he has some athletic ability. That was what I said when I was watching it by myself.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, man.
So yeah, this match is what you'd expect. We get weapons all over the place, chair shots, canes, barbed wire, all that stuff, the steel steps. But the thing that kind of set off everything was Shane Douglas coming out. But we got a ref bump in between it too. Obviously, it's a hardcore match, so why did we need a fucking ref bump? Made no sense. So Sandman gets pile driven. Douglas grabs the mic, tells Sandman to keep your friends close and your enemies by your side. And next thing we see is Shane jabbing Cactus in the face with half of the cane that was broken in half. Douglas puts Shane Douglas on top of him for the 1-2-3. 13 minutes and 11 seconds for the finish. Shane Douglas decides to stay in ECW if Todd Gordon will get down on his knees and ask him to stay. Instead, Todd Gordon fires Shane Douglas. Shane then beats the crap out of Todd Gordon, rips his clothes off, everything, pulling the tie off, pulling the dress shirt off. And then, damn, we get Shane Douglas being stopped by 911 chokeslam into a huge, huge pop. This would have been cool to end the show this way. I know you want the Gangstas are new to the company. You want that tag team championship, the tag team match, not even for the championship. See, I'm like a precondition. It should be for the championship. But it was a cool ending here. Shane Douglas is staying in ECW, but 911 being looked at as a monster, maybe getting a title shot down the line.
Yeah, no, and like I said, when shit goes awry, you call 911, and it works out beautiful, right? The Todd Gordon's getting the shit pistol, like just getting embarrassed to all beyond belief, and then 911 comes out and stops Douglas. I loved Douglas kind of talking shit to Sandman, like it was really cool. It wasn't a terrible match. It was fun. It was great to watch, and I think the other thing, the impressive side of Sandman is because you see him do so much shitty wrestling, is that when he does do something even slightly impressive in a shitty manner, it pops you, right? So like that's part of the love too, because you're like, holy fuck, like this guy's an asshole drunk that comes out and like smokes cigarettes, but he just flipped over the top rope, and I'm fucking impressed.
Man, you said it best, but let's go into Public Enemy versus the Gangstas. This is the first meeting between these two teams based off of barbed wire hoodies and choke slams at the end of the show, where the Gangstas debuted and beat the shit out of Public Enemy. This match is, they have a decent amount of time here, about 12 minutes to go. Lead us through, talk about this match. It was absolutely on from the beginning. There was a lot of chaos in this match.
Yeah, again, this is ECW at its best, right? You're watching two really good brawling tag teams. I mean, you got the Gangsters. Obviously, you're finally getting a taste of what they can do in the ring in a sanctioned match, unsanctioned match. It's something, right? So these guys are just all over the place. I mean, beating the piss out of each other. You got it written down in the notes. The brain couldn't even keep it all there. But we're mailboxes, tables, skillets, umbrellas. There was a croquet mallet. I mean, it's fucking insane, man. Yeah, New Jack's going through tables. Public Enemy's doing Public Enemy shit in the best way, man. And in a shocking manner, Mustafa gets cracked in the back of the head with the croquet mallet, and what's it called? Public Enemy pick up a win here, which is just mind blowing. Yeah, because you would think you wanted the Gangsters to look extremely strong, especially after get them arrested, Daddy. We want them out of the ring. You got Fonzie fucking shitting all over him earlier. So yeah, this was so good. I loved the play out at the end of it, where everybody gets in the ring. And all the fans rush the ring, and they're all sitting in there with Public Enemy. They're having a blast, man. It's I mean, that's another picturesque. Every ECW DVD you watch, you're watching the intro to Hardcore TV. Everybody's in the ring dance with Public Enemy. It's the beautiful love of it, and yeah, man, it was a fun match. I wish I would have gotten more. I wish the Gangsters would have went over just because I'm a New Jack Mark, and God damn it, I love it. But it was good fun brawling all over the arena, chaos end the show. God, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
Yeah, it was an interesting decision to have the Gangsters lose upon their first match here, and I know they're building towards Rage in the Cage Heat Wave next month, where you're going to want them confined to a cage, and I'm pretty sure the Gangsters get the win there. But it would make more sense for the Gangsters to get the win here, especially when they're introducing them. And I know a lot of your fans are smart and they understand what they did in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but you want to establish them as a threat to Public Enemy, and this is their match too. I know the Public Enemy uses tables too, but this is sort of the Gangsters' MO. They bring weapons to the ring and they kind of ensue chaos with everything in the ring, whether it be mailboxes, you mentioned, skillets, umbrellas, croquet mallets, and they lost at their own game, which is interesting. And this was a party match too. Like, you got to understand, like, we're watching this on TV on like a grainy video camera. Must have been such a blast to watch live because of the experience you have, but everything going on everywhere. We had, stuff happening in the crowd. You had stuff happening through tables. It was chaos that was really, really hard to follow. The suplexing on a table. It was everything you wanted from a live experience. I think something was missing in translation when you watch this on tape. So interesting booking decision. I'm not saying it ruined the match, but I think I probably would have went the other way, especially when you want to establish the Gangsters as a formidable force, because Public Enemy is already established to his audience. They know who they are. They know what they have accomplished. And it's the two things. The fact that you took the titles off of them and then you did this and had them win anyway. It was a very weird decision, especially like, I don't know, if the Gangsters were going over and you don't want them to be champions, I get that. Public Enemy went over, so they could have just retained the titles and kept the championships involved. So
yeah,
I'd love to ask Paul what he was thinking.
No, absolutely. And then you could have had Raven and Richards do it on a televised event that you're going to see in a timely manner. You know what I mean? Like, right. There's no need for it. But whatever the case is, still very entertaining. And I do want to add, much like GCW, the production of this show seemed so much better than previous ones. I could actually hear anybody talking to the microphone. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like you got the whole vibe for it. So kudos on that as well. But the awesome way to end the show, just strictly chaos. Everybody, I love the fans rushing the ring. It's beautiful. It's cool. It is an absolute party match with a party ending in the best party style ever.
Yeah, so we'll see next month what happens with Public Enemy and the Gangsters, but this certainly left the fans going home happy because Public Enemy are there. They're their boys. That's the act that's so familiar to them, and the crowd was happy. No matter what happened, it was just they wanted the violence and they wanted just interaction with the Public Enemy, be able to do the song and dance. And maybe that's what Paul Heyman had in mind when he booked them to win.
Yeah, I'm cool.
All right, let's go with the Chaser. Our favorite part of Hardcore Heaven, and then kind of lead the way out to start our weekend here for New Year's Eve. All right, so every week we'll pick our favorite part of the event we are watching. This was Hardcore Heaven 1995. Mike Belcaster, what was your favorite part and why?
You know what? Not a lot of meat on the bone for this one. Not a terrible event. I thought it was really fun, but I'm going to go with Too Cold Scorpio and Taz. I thought great technical mat wrestling, awesome spots. Too Cold Scorpio is fucking amazing no matter what. I mean, till this day, still so good. But to see him kind of turn on Taz, showing up with the black and orange on, it's really telling good story. And then you got the Fonzie thing in the middle of it. Like, it's Paulie's out there. Like, there's so much rich depth to this. If you want to know how to tell multiple stories in one match, this is picture perfect way to do it, man. This is paint by numbers. This is awesome how they did it, and it was really fun, man.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That was probably my initial knee-jerk reaction. I'm going to go Public Enemy and the Gangsters because it was a fun party match that probably shouldn't have made evented. but it did. And that's sort of how ECW views its world championship. And that's something I'm really taking away from doing this, is the fact that the ECW championship is looked at as not the most important thing about the company. And that's an interesting approach that only Paul Heyman can speak to. And maybe it's not intentional, but it is something that is very obvious throughout this. And maybe it's something that doesn't really change. Like, FW championship means a lot, but I don't know. The world title always seems like it's secondary, and they're always pushing some other program ahead of it. And maybe it's just because the guys are involved in the world title. Who knows what the mindset is?
Yeah, I mean, just wait until you see what they do with the TV title, because I mean that's the main event for like 2-3 years. I mean, it's some of the best shit ever, and I mean that's good thanks to RVD and Jerry Lynn. But I always felt the heavyweight title was always on the back burner here. Never really was the big picture, which I don't think that is a bad thing. I think it was cool to have the likes of the FTW title making such a big deal, and the same thing with the with the fucking tag titles, the TV title. Like they really gave a moment for those to shine more, because every company's got a heavyweight title, so maybe that was by design. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah.
And you mentioned there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone, and I completely agree with that. It didn't receive great reviews, hardcore. I mean, you guys can go check out the reviews from different guys, like 411 Mania gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Wrestling Revolution gave it the rating was a bad show, was barely over 2 hours, but aside from Taz Scorpio, it dragged along painfully. But we got to keep in mind here, this is ECW 1995 without Benoit, without Malenko, without Guerrero. These guys are all in Japan. By Heatwave, July 15th, when we're returning, these guys will be returning from their recent tour in Japan. They're going to be here in time for the show. So we're going to get a return of all those guys. So I think it should really alleviate some of the issues we're seeing. Obviously, we're going to see the debut next week of Rey Mysterio. We're going to get to see Psychosis, guys like that. So that will definitely appease the fans that want good wrestling. I think that's what was really apparent. We didn't get the good wrestling. We got Taz and Scorpio, but at the end of the day, you need to have that one banger match. And it was apparent that it was missing. And that's because Benoit, Malenko, and Guerrero are no longer here. Well,
listen, you got a lot when the Taipei Death Match. All right, is there to hold the whole fucking showdown until they get back.
So that being said, let's get to closing the tab, lead us into next week, and talk about what's coming up down the line. All right, Mike Belcaster. Next week's show is going to be episode 8 of season 2. We're covering ECW Heatwave 1995. I'm going to show the graphic here for you guys to check it out. Oh, I don't have the graphic actually, so I don't have it here. But it will be on my birthday. On Friday. Next Friday is my birthday. We won't be recording live, but I'm sure we're going to do some, reminiscing about the fact I'm becoming 1 year older. I think you and I will be the same age.
Hell yeah, man. We're shortly only a few weeks apart, too, which is great.
So some of the matches we have on that event, we're going to be having the main event steel cage match, Public Enemy, Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge taking on the Gangstas, New Jack and Mustafa. We're going to be getting a huge event that took place, and we'll be talking about it in depth. But, in the cage match between Stevie Richards and Luna Vachon, we saw the Tommy Dreamer handcuffing Raven moment, known as the chair shot, heard round the world. So that's going to be something we're going to be talking about in length, because that's something that people see. We talk about the chairs being thrown in the ring, talk about the other ECW moments. That's one of the moments that people talk about.
Every intro, every clip, you see that, and it's a beautiful sight to see. It's great.
So we have less than a minute here, Mike Belcaster. What's going on Fig Night? What's coming up down the rest of the line for the tavern? And as we say goodbye to 2022.
Listen, man, it's going to be a brand new year, but the same great things going down at the Turnbuckle Tavern. You got all of our lovely shows. TheTurnbuckleTavern.com's got everything you possibly can find for what we need. You see it right there. You see all those little cute little those little graphics. Those are all where we're found. You get Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Twitch, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pro Wrestling Tees, Spring Tees, you name it. Join the community. Come hang out. Can't wait to see what 2023 brings, because 2022 was a fucking banger of a year for us. So thank you to all who watch. Thank you for all your support. We really, really appreciate it. It's just going to get better from here, guys. So hang on to the ride. Enjoy it. All right.
All right. Well, Belcaster, lead us out. We'll Paul Heyman lead us out because this is a fun episode, the last of 2022. So happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year's Eve. Be safe and enjoy the time with your families.
Yes. Don't drink and drive and don't be like that Ponzi Fonzie. I'm going to go kick his dumb broke ass right now. He can't be pulling this shit. No wrestlers, my ass. I'm Paul Heyman. We'll see you next week.